When your worst boss becomes your biggest burden at 2 a.m., do you hang up or step up? Ethan Cole made the choice that would unravel everything he thought he knew about power, pain, and second chances. One phone call, one broken woman, one impossible night that would transform a ruthless corporate queen into something entirely unexpected. This isn't a story about falling in love with your boss. It's about what happens when kindness meets karma, when vulnerability shatters armor, and when two shattered souls decide that maybe, just maybe, being human is worth the risk. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The phone screamed into the darkness at 2:47 a.m. Ethan Cole's hand shot out from under the threadbare comforter, fingers fumbling across the nightstand, knocking over an empty coffee mug before finally closing around the vibrating device. His eyes, gritty with exhaustion, cracked open just enough to register the name blazing across the screen. Clara Hale. His heart dropped into his stomach like a stone through ice. For 3 full seconds, Ethan stared at that name, the name that had become synonymous with impossible deadlines, scathing emails sent at ungodly hours, and the particular brand of professional torture that made grown men update their resumes in bathroom stalls. Clara Hale didn't call her senior copywriter at 2:47 a.m. Unless someone was dying, the office was burning down, or she'd discovered a typo in a campaign that had already gone live. None of those options were good. Ethan's thumb hovered over the decline button. God, how he wanted to press it. How he wanted to silence that shrill ring, roll over, and pretend this moment had never happened. In the next room, his 7-year-old daughter Mia was sleeping, her nightlight casting soft stars across her ceiling. She had school in the morning, he had a presentation at 9. They both needed sleep more than they needed whatever fresh crisis Clara Hale was about to dump into his lap. But Ethan Cole had been raised by a mother who believed that character was what you did when no one was watching, and decency was what you did when you had every reason not to. Those lessons had been hammered into him during lean years in a Rust Belt town where people still helped their neighbors because survival depended on it. So he answered. "Hello?" The sound that came through the speaker wasn't words. It was chaos wrapped in expensive perfume and bad decisions. Music pounded in the background, bass so heavy he could feel it through the phone. Voices shouted over each other. Someone laughed, high and cruel. And underneath it all, slurred and desperate, came Clara's voice. Ethan, I can't." Her words collapsed into each other like a building losing its foundation. "Everyone's staring. They're taking pictures. Oh God, they're taking pictures." He sat up, fully awake now, adrenaline washing away the fog of interrupted sleep. "Clara? Where are you?" "Verve. No, wait, Voltage? The place with the lights." A bitter laugh. "Always with the goddamn lights. Marcus said I should go home, but I can't remember where My phone's dying. Everyone's dying. Everything's... Clara, listen to me." Ethan kept his voice level, calm, the same tone he used when Mia woke up from nightmares. "Are you safe right now? Are you hurt?" "Hurt?" She laughed again, and this time it cracked in the middle. "I'm the one who hurts people, didn't you know? Ask anyone. Ask you, Ice Queen Clara, Ballbuster Hale. The woman who made Jenkins cry in the 3rd-floor conference room." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They think I don't know what they call me." Ethan's mind raced. Voltage was a downtown lounge that catered to the same crowd that thought $300 bottles of vodka were a reasonable Tuesday night expense. It was 40 minutes away, minimum. Mia was asleep down the hall. He had no one to call, no neighbor he trusted enough at 3 in the morning, no backup plan that didn't involve waking up his daughter and dragging her into whatever nightmare scenario was unfolding on the other end of this call. Every logical bone in his body screamed at him to make an excuse, hang up, and let Clara Hale deal with the consequences of her own choices. She'd certainly never shown him any mercy. Just last week, she'd eviscerated him in front of the entire creative team because a tagline was adequate instead of exceptional. She'd denied his request for flexible hours 3 times, forcing him to use sick days when Mia's school called. She'd passed him over for the senior creative director position and given it to someone half as qualified with twice the ass-kissing skills. Clara Hale had made his professional life a special kind of hell for 2 solid years, and now she was drunk, alone, and falling apart in a public place where someone was definitely recording her meltdown for social media immortality. "What's the address?" Ethan heard himself say. "What?" "The address, Clara. What's the exact address of where you are?" She rattled off a street corner between hiccups. Ethan was already out of bed, grabbing the jeans he'd draped over the chair, switching the phone to speaker as he pulled a shirt over his head. "Stay inside," he said, forcing authority into his voice. "Find a corner, sit down, and do not leave the building. I'm coming to get you." "You're—" She sounded genuinely shocked. "Why would you, after everything I've—" "Because it's the right thing to do. Now stay put." He ended the call before she could argue or he could reconsider. The walk down the hall to Mia's room felt like moving through water. She was curled on her side, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant she'd named Mr. Trunk, her dark hair spreading across the pillow like spilled ink. She looked so small, so trusting, so completely dependent on him to make good choices. Ethan crouched beside her bed, gently brushing hair from her forehead. "Mia, sweetheart, wake up for me." Her eyes fluttered open, confused and soft with sleep. "Daddy?" "Hey, baby, I need you to wake up, okay? We have to go for a drive." "Now?" She rubbed her eyes with small fists. "It's dark." "I know, I'm sorry. Someone needs help, and we're going to help them." He kept his voice gentle but firm. "I need you to get dressed, grab Mr. Trunk, and meet me by the door in 5 minutes. Can you do that?" Mia, bless her adaptive heart, nodded. She'd learned early that life with a single parent meant sometimes plans changed without warning. "Is it an emergency?" "Sort of, but we're okay. I promise." 4 minutes later, she appeared in the living room wearing mismatched shoes and her favorite purple hoodie over her pajamas, elephant tucked under one arm. Ethan felt something crack in his chest, pride and heartbreak mixing into an emotion he didn't have a name for. "You're the best kid in the world," he said, grabbing his keys. "I know," she replied with the beautiful, unconscious confidence of childhood. The drive downtown was a study in contrasts. Their neighborhood, modest houses with chain-link fences and cars that had earned every scratch, gave way to glass towers and buildings that glittered like vertical rivers of light. Mia pressed her face to the window, watching the city transform around them. "Where are we going exactly?" she asked. "To pick up someone who needs a ride home." "Is it Miss Clara? From your work?" Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd mentioned his boss exactly twice to Mia, once when she'd asked why Daddy looked so sad after work, and once when she'd found him updating his resume at the kitchen table and wanted to know what it was for. He'd tried to keep it vague, age-appropriate. Apparently he'd failed. "What makes you think it's Miss Clara?" "Because you make the same face when you talk about her that you made when you talk about Grandma's green beans." Mia swung her legs, too short to reach the floor. "You don't like them, but you eat them anyway because it's the nice thing to do." Out of the mouths of babes. "Yeah," Ethan admitted. "It's Miss Clara." "Is she sick?" "Something like that." They found parking 2 blocks from Voltage, an absurd stroke of luck that felt cosmically suspicious. Ethan locked the car, then turned to Mia with his serious face. "I need you to wait here for a few minutes while I go inside and find her. Keep the doors locked. Don't open them for anyone but me. If anything feels wrong, you call 911. Understand?" Mia's eyes went wide, but she nodded. "I'll protect Mr. Trunk." "That's my girl." The walk to Voltage's entrance felt like moving through a fever dream. The bass from inside the club vibrated through the sidewalk, each beat a small earthquake. A line of people in clothes that cost more than Ethan's monthly rent snaked along the building, their faces painted with boredom and entitlement. The bouncer at the door was the size of a small refrigerator, arms crossed over a chest that had its own zip code. Ethan approached with his hands visible, non-threatening. "I'm here to pick up someone. Clara Hale say she called me about 20 minutes ago." The bouncer's expression didn't change. "Name's not on the list." "I'm not trying to get in. I'm trying to get someone out." Ethan pulled out his phone, showing the call log. "She's had too much to drink. I'm here to take her home safely." Something flickered in the bouncer's eyes. Recognition, maybe respect. He'd probably seen this scenario play out 1,000 times in 1,000 different variations. Description: 5'6", blonde, probably wearing something expensive and currently regretting most of her recent life choices. The corner of the bouncer's mouth twitched. Yeah, I know who you mean. She's in the back corner booth. Manager was about to call her a cab. He stepped aside, jerking his head toward the door. Make it quick. Inside, voltage was exactly what Ethan expected, and somehow worse. Lights strobed in nauseating patterns, turning the crowd into a stop-motion animation of grinding bodies and raised glasses. The air was thick enough to chew, a mixture of expensive cologne, spilled alcohol, and the particular desperation that came from people trying too hard to have a good time. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the annoyed looks and the woman who tried to hand him a drink he definitely hadn't ordered. The back corner booth was partially concealed by a decorative screen, probably designed to give VIP patrons an illusion of privacy while still keeping them visible enough to maintain their status. Clara Hale was a portrait of destruction. She sat slumped in the corner of the leather booth, her normally immaculate blonde hair falling in limp strands around her face. The designer dress, navy blue, probably worth a month of Ethan's salary, was twisted around her body like she'd been wrestling with it. Her makeup, usually applied with surgical precision, had migrated south, leaving dark smudges under her eyes that made her look haunted. But it was her expression that stopped Ethan cold. He'd seen Clara angry, seen her calculating, seen her deliver soul-crushing performance reviews with the emotional investment of someone reading a grocery list. He'd never seen her look lost. She was staring at her phone, which sat on the table in a puddle of something sticky and amber-colored. The screen was dark, dead. Her hand hovered above it like she was trying to will it back to life through sheer force of desperation. Clara! Her head snapped up, eyes struggling to focus. When recognition finally hit, her face cycled through confusion, shame, and something that might have been relief so intense it hurt to watch. Ethan? His name came out broken. You actually... I didn't think you'd... Yeah, well, here I am. He slid into the booth across from her, assessing the damage. How much have you had to drink? Not enough. She laughed, then immediately looked like she regretted it. Or way too much. The math is unclear. Can you walk? Can I walk? She straightened, trying for indignant and landing somewhere around dizzy. I'm the vice president of creative strategy at Hale & Morrison. I've walked into boardrooms with venture capitalists who eat people like me for breakfast. I've walked... She tried to stand, her legs immediately betraying her. Ethan caught her arm before she could faceplant into the table. Okay, we're establishing that walking is aspirational at this point. He maneuvered himself next to her, getting an arm around her waist. We're going to stand up together on 3, 1, 2... They rose in a graceless tangle of limbs and apologies. Clara's expensive shoes, heels that could double as weapons, made her wobble dangerously. Ethan guided her out of the booth, supporting most of her weight while trying to maintain some degree of dignity for both of them. The walk through voltage felt like traversing a hostile battlefield. People stared. Some laughed. Ethan saw at least 3 phones raised, recording their awkward exodus. He positioned himself between Clara and the worst of the cameras, using his body as a shield. They're watching, Clara mumbled against his shoulder. They're all watching me fall apart. Let them watch, Ethan replied, jaw tight. By tomorrow, they'll have moved on to the next scandal. Keep moving. The cool night air hit them like a blessing when they finally made it outside. Clara gasped, filling her lungs with oxygen that didn't taste like regret and bad decisions. The bouncer gave Ethan a nod of acknowledgement as they passed. My car's 2 blocks that way, Ethan said, adjusting his grip. Think you can make it? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. But your options right now are walk with me or I throw you over my shoulder fireman style, and I really don't think either of us wants that. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. You're different outside the office. So are you. They moved slowly, Claire's heels clicking an uneven rhythm against the sidewalk. She leaned heavily against him, and Ethan tried not to think about how small she felt, how fragile. At work, Clara Hale was a force of nature, all sharp edges and barely contained fury. Here, at 3 a.m. with her defenses stripped away, she was just a person who'd made some bad choices and was about to face a killer hangover. Why did you come? She asked suddenly, her voice small. Because you called. That's not an answer. After everything the way I've treated you. She stumbled, and Ethan caught her. You should have let me drown. Yeah, well, I'm a terrible employee that way. They reached the car to find Mia pressed against the window, eyes wide. When she saw her father supporting a half-conscious woman in a designer dress, her expression shifted to something between concern and curiosity. Ethan opened the back door, helping Clara inside with as much gentleness as he could manage. She collapsed against the seat like a puppet with cut strings. Buckle up, he instructed, then turned to Mia. You okay, kiddo? Is she okay? Mia whispered, staring at Clara with the unblinking intensity only children could manage. She will be. She just needs to sleep it off. He climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine. Clara, I need your address. Silence from the back. Clara? He checked the rearview mirror. She'd passed out, her head resting against the window, her breathing deep and even. Of course. Because this night couldn't be straightforward. Ethan sat back, running a hand through his hair. He could drive her to her office. He knew that address by heart, given how much time he spent there. But leaving her passed out in the parking lot seemed both irresponsible and likely to result in a Monday morning conversation he really didn't want to have. He could take her to his place, but the optics of bringing his drunk boss home to his apartment in the middle of the night while his daughter was present felt like a lawsuit waiting to happen. Daddy? Mia's voice was tentative. What are we going to do? Good question, kiddo. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, her address. Manager grabbed it from her ID before she left. Figured you might need it. Marcus, Voltage Manager. The address followed. A high-rise in the Meridian District, naturally. The kind of building that had a doorman and monthly HOA fees that exceeded Ethan's rent. Thank you, universe, Ethan muttered, programming the address into his GPS. The drive across the city gave him too much time to think, about choices and consequences, about the strange intimacy of seeing someone you'd cast as a villain revealed as simply human, about how tomorrow Clara would probably wake up mortified and either pretend this never happened or find a way to make his life even more miserable to compensate for the vulnerability. But tonight, right now, in this moment, Ethan was just a guy doing the right thing because someone needed help. It was that simple and that complicated. The Meridian Tower rose against the night sky like a monument to expensive taste and strategic investment portfolios. The doorman, because of course there was a doorman, watched their arrival with professional neutrality that probably concealed intense judgment. Ms. Hale, the doorman said, recognition flickering across his face. Is everything all right? She's had a rough night, Ethan replied, maneuvering Clara out of the car. She was conscious now, barely, making small sounds of protest. I'm helping her get upstairs. The doorman's eyes flicked to Mia, who'd insisted on coming inside. To his credit, he didn't comment, just held the door open with practiced grace. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor was silent, except for the soft jazz piped through hidden speakers and Clara's occasional mumbled apology to no one in particular. Mia held Mr. Trunk tight, watching Clara with the kind of open fascination that children had for adults behaving strangely. Which apartment? Ethan asked as the elevator doors opened. 2304. Clara fumbled in her purse, which had somehow stayed attached to her shoulder through everything. Keys are somewhere in this black hole of receipts and regret. Ethan found them wedged between a lipstick and what appeared to be a business card from someone named Dimitri who'd written "Call me" on the back. He filed that information away under "None of my business" and unlocked the door. Clara's apartment was exactly what he expected, and nothing like he imagined. Yes, it was immaculate, all clean lines and modern furniture that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. Yes, everything was expensive, from the marble countertops to the original artwork on the walls, but it was also sterile, empty. There were no photos, no personal touches, no evidence that an actual human being lived here. It looked like a very expensive hotel room occupied by someone who'd never bothered to unpack. Home sweet home, Clara said bitterly, pulling away from Ethan and immediately regretting it as she swayed. Welcome to the showcase of my successful, meaningful life. Where's your bedroom? She pointed down a hallway, then seemed to think better of it. Actually, the couch is fine. I'll probably throw up anyway, and the couch is leather, easy to clean. She laughed at her own dark joke. Ethan guided her to the couch, helping her sit. Mia had wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city lights spread below like a carpet of fallen stars. "Wow," she breathed. "It's so pretty up here." "It's a cage," Clara muttered, kicking off her heels with vicious satisfaction. "A very expensive cage with a view." She looked up at Ethan, her eyes clearer now but filled with something raw and painful. "Do you want to know the truth? The real, ugly truth?" "Clara, you don't have to. I had a daughter." The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples that would spread for miles. "Emma. She would have been 12 this year. Would have been." Her voice cracked. "Brain cancer. 3 years from diagnosis to the end. And then I had a husband who decided grief was too inconvenient, so he found someone younger, someone who didn't remind him of everything we lost." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. Mia turned from the window, her young face solemn with the weight of understanding that something terrible had been shared. "So I threw myself into work," Clara continued, the words pouring out like poison she'd been storing too long. "I became the woman who never says no to a deadline, who never takes vacation, who makes everyone around her miserable because misery was the only thing that felt real. And you," she pointed at Ethan with a trembling finger, "you with your daughter and your flexible schedule requests and your complete life. I hated you for having what I lost. How's that for professional development?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush diamonds. Mia crossed the room and did something that stopped Ethan's heart. She climbed onto the couch next to Clara and offered her Mr. Trunk. "You can hold him," Mia said softly. "He helps when things are sad." Clara stared at the stuffed elephant like it was an alien artifact. Then slowly she took it, clutching it to her chest as tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Not the pretty, delicate tears of movies, but the ugly, gut-wrenching sobs of someone who'd been holding back an ocean. Ethan stood frozen, watching his boss, his terrible, ruthless, impossible boss, fall completely apart, while his 7-year-old daughter patted her arm and made soft, soothing sounds. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a text from a number he recognized as Clara's assistant, Marcus. "Big problem. Kellerman account. He's threatening to pull everything. Wants to speak to Clara now. Won't take no for answer." Ethan looked at Clara, who was still crying into Mr. Trunk's synthetic fur. He looked at his daughter, who'd somehow appointed herself the world's smallest crisis counselor. He looked at his phone again, at the message that represented a multi-million-dollar account about to explode. And then Ethan Cole, senior copywriter who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times, made a decision that was either brilliant or career-ending, possibly both. He dialed Kellerman's number directly. "This is Ethan Cole, senior creative strategist working with Clara Hale on your account. I understand there's a concern that needs immediate attention." The voice on the other end of the line was sharp enough to cut glass. "Who the hell is this? I asked for Clara Hale, not some—" "Mr. Kellerman, I understand you're frustrated." Ethan kept his voice level, professional, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. "Ms. Hale is temporarily unavailable due to a family emergency, but I've been briefed on every aspect of your account. I'm prepared to address your concerns right now." Clara's head snapped up from where she'd been sobbing into Mr. Trunk. Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, went wide with something between horror and disbelief. She shook her head frantically, mouthing the word no over and over. Ethan turned away, focusing on the call that could either save everything or destroy what little remained of his career. "A family emergency?" Kellerman's laugh was acid. "That's convenient. You know what I think is a family emergency? The fact that my teenage daughter just showed me the mock-ups for our spring campaign, and she said, and I quote, 'Dad, this looks like it was designed by someone's grandpa trying to be cool. My 16-year-old daughter just torched a $2 million campaign before it even launched.'" Ethan's mind raced. He'd seen those mock-ups. Clara had presented them in last Thursday's meeting with her characteristic confidence, brooking no disagreement. They were safe, corporate, designed to appeal to the broadest possible demographic while offending absolutely no one. They were also, if he was being honest, completely forgettable. He'd said as much in his notes, which Clara had dismissed with a curt, "We're not here to take creative risks with an account this size." "Your daughter's right," Ethan said. The silence on the other end was absolute. Behind him, he heard Clara make a strangled sound. "Excuse me?" Kellerman's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "The current mock-ups don't reflect what makes Kellerman Athletics unique in the market. They're playing it safe when your brand has always been about pushing boundaries. Your company's origin story, you started in your garage making custom shoes for local athletes who couldn't afford the big brands. That's not a story about playing it safe. That's rebellion. That's authenticity. And right now, we're selling you like you're just another corporate entity instead of the brand that tells mainstream athletic companies to go to hell." Ethan could feel Clara's stare boring into his back. Mia had gone very still, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand the specifics. "Keep talking," Kellerman said, and for the first time he sounded interested instead of angry. "We need to scrap the current direction and rebuild from the ground up. Not a refresh, a revolution. I'm talking about showcasing real athletes, not models. People who chose Kellerman because they couldn't afford Nike, but stayed with Kellerman because they believed in what you stand for. User-generated content, raw footage, stories that feel earned instead of manufactured. We stop trying to compete with the big brands on their terms and start reminding people why the alternative matters. That's a complete overhaul. We launch in 6 weeks. Then we have 6 weeks to do something that actually matters instead of something that just exists." Ethan's grip tightened on his phone. "Mr. Kellerman, you didn't build your company by asking permission or playing by someone else's rules. Why would you advertise it that way?" The pause that followed felt like it lasted several lifetimes. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the weight of Clara's gaze, could sense the entire trajectory of his career balanced on whatever came next. "Send me a revised creative brief by end of business Monday," Kellerman said finally. "And I want you leading this, not Clara. Nothing personal against her, but you clearly understand what I'm trying to build here. She was selling me beige. I don't do beige." "You'll have it by noon," Ethan promised. "Noon Monday, or I pull the account and you can explain to your superiors how you lost $2 million over a phone call at 3 a.m. The line went dead. Ethan lowered his phone slowly, staring at it like it might explode. Behind him, the silence was so complete he could hear the hum of Clara's refrigerator from the kitchen. "Did you just—" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "Did you just completely undermine my creative direction, promise a full campaign overhaul in 6 weeks, and commit me to a deliverable I had no part in approving?" Ethan turned to face her. She was still holding Mr. Trunk, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her designer dress wrinkled beyond redemption. She looked simultaneously furious and awed. "Yeah," he said, "I did. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever witnessed in my entire career." She set the stuffed elephant down carefully, like it was made of spun glass. "I genuinely can't decide which." "Does it matter? The account's saved. For now, until Monday, when Kellerman expects a creative genius to materialize a campaign that I've been working on with a team of 6 people for 3 months. Clara dragged her hands through her hair, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a woman at the absolute end of her rope. "He wants you leading it. Do you have any idea what that means? That I've got about 72 hours to either prove myself or update my resume? That you just painted a target on your back the size of Texas?" But there was something else in her voice now, something that sounded almost like respect. "The old guard at the agency is going to eviscerate you. They're going to say you took advantage of my absence, that you staged a coup, that you manipulated a client during a crisis." "Let them say it." Ethan felt something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Not confidence exactly, but a kind of reckless certainty. "I'm tired of making safe choices that nobody remembers. If I'm going to fail, I'd rather fail doing something that matters." Clara studied him for a long moment, her analytical mind visibly working through implications and consequences. Then, slowly, she started to laugh. It began as a small sound, almost bitter, but grew into something genuine and a little bit wild. "You're insane," she said. You're absolutely insane, and I think I've been punishing you for 2 years because some part of me recognized that and hated you for it. Hated me for what? For still having hope. For still believing that taking risks could lead to something good instead of just... She gestured vaguely at herself, at the pristine apartment that held no warmth, at the life she'd built from the ashes of her grief. Mia, who'd been watching this exchange with the focused attention of someone watching a tennis match, spoke up. Are you going to fire my dad? Clara blinked, seeming to really see Mia for the first time since she'd handed over Mr. Trunk. What? For being insane and taking risks, are you going to fire him? Mia's chin jutted out stubbornly. Because if you do, I'm going to write a letter to your boss and tell them you're being mean. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the stress, the sheer absurdity of the entire night, Ethan felt his lips twitch. Clara looked at Mia with an expression that cycled through surprise, confusion, and finally something that might have been the ghost of a smile. Your father just saved a multi-million-dollar account and potentially my entire career. I'm not going to fire him. She paused. I'm going to make his life significantly more complicated, but that's different. Promises, Ethan muttered. Clara stood, swaying only slightly, and walked to her kitchen. She returned with 3 bottles of water, handing them out like peace offerings. You should go home. Your daughter needs sleep, and you need to start figuring out how you're going to deliver on the promise you just made. What about you? What about me? Are you going to be okay? The question felt absurd, even as he asked it. This was Clara Hale, the woman who'd once fired someone via email while she was in the hospital getting her appendix removed. Clara Hale didn't do not okay, except she clearly did, because she was looking at him with eyes that held too much honesty, too much raw emotion for 3 a.m. in front of a subordinate and his young daughter. Probably not, she said quietly, but I'll survive. I always do. She knelt down to Mia's level, and Ethan's breath caught because he'd never seen Clara voluntarily make herself smaller, more vulnerable. Thank you for sharing Mr. Trunk with me. That was very kind. You can keep him tonight if you want, Mia offered. Sometimes it helps to have someone to hug. For a second, Ethan thought Clara might start crying again. Instead, she reached out and gently touched Mia's cheek. I have my own elephant at home. In a box. In a storage unit. Maybe it's time I got him out. The drive home was quiet. Mia fell asleep in the back seat before they made it out of the Meridian district, her head resting against the window, her breathing soft and even. Ethan drove through streets that were just beginning to show signs of early morning life, delivery trucks making their rounds, the occasional jogger determined to beat the sunrise, a city slowly waking up to face whatever Friday would bring. His phone buzzed with a text. Clara, thank you for coming, for not leaving me there, for saving Kellerman, for bringing your daughter, who is apparently wiser than both of us combined. Another buzz. Monday is going to be complicated. And another, but maybe complicated is better than empty. Ethan didn't respond. There wasn't anything to say that wouldn't sound trite or presumptuous. Instead, he drove home, carried his sleeping daughter to her bed, and tucked her in with Mr. Trunk restored to his rightful place. Then he made coffee, opened his laptop, and started building a creative brief that would either make his career or end it. By the time Mia woke up at 7, squinting against the sunlight streaming through her window, Ethan had filled 12 pages with ideas, concepts, and a vision for Kellerman athletics that made his earlier work look like amateur hour. Daddy? Mia appeared in the doorway in her purple pajamas, hair sticking up in at least 4 directions. Did last night really happen? Yeah, kiddo, it really happened. Is Miss Clara going to be nicer now? Ethan thought about Clara's apartment, about the grief she'd carried like armor, about the way she'd clutched a stuffed elephant and finally let herself break. I don't know, but I think maybe she's going to try to be more honest, and sometimes honest is better than nice. Mia considered this with the seriousness of a philosopher. I hope she gets her elephant out of the box. Me too, baby, me too. The weekend passed in a blur of frantic creativity and careful parenting. Ethan worked during Mia's Saturday morning cartoons, during her afternoon playdate with the neighbor's kid, during the quiet hours after she went to bed. He reached out to contacts he'd made over the years. A photographer who specialized in documentary-style sports coverage. A videographer who'd done raw, emotional pieces for nonprofits. A designer who understood that sometimes the most powerful statement was the absence of polish. By Sunday evening, he had something that felt real. Not perfect, not corporate approved, but real. His phone rang at 8 p.m. "Clara, tell me you have something," she said without preamble. Her voice sounded steadier than it had Friday night, but there was an underlying tension that suggested she'd spent the weekend doing her own form of reckoning. "I have something. Good enough to bet your career on? Honestly, I have no idea, but it's authentic, and right now that feels more important than good." A long pause. "Send it to me." "Clara, it's Sunday night. Send it to me, Ethan. I need to see what I'm walking into tomorrow." He sent the brief. Then he waited, staring at his phone like it might spontaneously combust. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Mia came out for water, sensed something important was happening, and retreated without being asked. When Clara finally called back, her voice was different, quieter. "This is going to piss off a lot of people. I know. It's going to require us to throw out 3 months of work and start from scratch with a fraction of the timeline. I know. Kellerman is going to love it, which means the board is going to have no choice but to back it, which means everyone who told me to play it safe is going to look like they were wrong." She laughed, sharp and sudden. "Ethan, this is brilliant and vindictive and exactly the kind of creative risk I've spent 2 years telling myself we couldn't afford to take. So we're doing this? We're doing this, but there are going to be conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "The kind we discuss in person. My office. Tomorrow. 7 a.m. "Clara, that's non-negotiable. If we're going to blow up my carefully constructed professional life, we're going to do it properly." She hesitated, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight he'd never heard before. "I'm sorry, Ethan, for the last 2 years. For taking out my grief on someone who didn't deserve it. For being so consumed by what I lost that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. You deserve better." Ethan sat down hard on his couch, blindsided by the apology he'd never expected to receive. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll be in my office at 7, and bring coffee, the good stuff, not the sludge from the break room." "Deal." Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of a freight train. Ethan dropped Mia at before-school care, ignoring her knowing look when she hugged him extra tight, and whispered, "Be brave, Daddy." He arrived at the office at 6:50 a.m., 2 cups of premium dark roast in hand, and took the elevator to the executive floor with his heart in his throat. Claire's assistant wasn't in yet. Wouldn't be for another hour. But her office door was open, light spilling into the hallway. Clara stood at her window, looking out over the city in the early morning light. She changed from her usual power suits into something simpler: black pants, a gray sweater, minimal jewelry. She looked almost human. "You're early," she said without turning around. "So are you." "I haven't been home yet." She finally turned to face him, and Ethan saw the truth of it in her face. The exhaustion, the determination, the residue of a weekend spent facing demons she'd been running from for years. "I spent the last 48 hours reading everything you've ever written for this agency. Every campaign pitch, every tagline, every concept that got shot down because it was too risky or too honest or too whatever excuse I used to kill creativity." She crossed to her desk, where a stack of printed documents sat in an accusatory pile. "You know what I found? Brilliance, consistently. And you know what else I found? My handwriting in the margins, tearing apart ideas that were better than anything I'd approved in months." Ethan set down the coffee cups carefully. "Clara, I'm not finished." She picked up the top document, one he recognized as a pitch for a nonprofit campaign about literacy. He'd poured his heart into it. She'd killed it in under 5 minutes. "This one. You wanted to feature actual people who'd learned to read as adults, their stories in their own words. I said it was too emotional, too raw. The donors wanted inspiration, not discomfort. I remember. I was wrong. I was wrong about this, about Kellerman, about dozens of other campaigns where I chose safety over substance because I was terrified that if I let myself feel something about the work, I'd have to feel everything else too." She set the document down, met his eyes. I'm done being that person, but I can't do this alone. What are you asking? I'm asking you to be my partner on Kellerman, not my subordinate, not my yes man, my actual creative partner. Equal say, equal credit, equal blame if it crashes and burns. Clara's hands were steady, but Ethan could see the effort it took. And I'm asking you to call me out when I start retreating into the same old patterns, because I will. Grief doesn't just disappear because you acknowledge it. I'm going to have bad days. I'm going to want to play it safe. I'm going to slip back into the armor that's kept me functional for 3 years. And if I say yes to this, what happens to everyone else on the creative team? The people who've been working Kellerman for months? They'll hate you. They'll think you manipulated a crisis for personal gain. Some of them will lodge formal complaints. It's going to be ugly. Clara's smile was thin but genuine. Welcome to the politics of creative leadership. And my request for flexible hours? For time with Mia? Approved. Retroactively for the last 2 years. You'll keep your full salary and benefits, but if you need to leave at 3 to pick up your daughter, you leave at 3. If you need to work from home because she's sick, you work from home. And anyone who has a problem with it can bring it to me directly. Ethan stared at her, searching for the catch, the hidden clause that would make this all make sense. Why? Because you showed up at 3 in the morning when you had every reason to hang up on me. Because your 7-year-old daughter taught me more about compassion in 5 minutes than I've learned in 3 years of therapy I won't admit to anyone I'm attending. Because you saved my account and my reputation and asked for nothing in return. Clara's voice softened. And because I'm tired of punishing you for having what I lost. You're a good father. That shouldn't be a liability. The elevator dinged in the distance. Other early arrivals, the office slowly coming to life. They didn't have much time before the performance would begin, before Clara would have to be the VP of Creative Strategy and Ethan would have to be the senior copywriter who'd somehow landed the biggest account of the season. Okay, Ethan said. Okay? I'll partner with you on Kellerman. Equal say, equal credit, equal blame. But I have a condition of my own. Clara raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. You get the elephant out of storage. You put it somewhere you can see it. And when you have a bad day, and you will, you remember that grief isn't weakness and vulnerability isn't failure. For a moment, Clara looked like she might argue, might retreat behind the professional distance that had served her for so long. Then she nodded, once, sharp and definite. Deal. They shook hands, a formal gesture that felt absurdly official given that Ethan had seen this woman sobbing into his daughter's stuffed toy less than 72 hours ago. But it was also necessary, a line in the sand, a commitment made tangible. The office began to fill. Voices echoed in hallways. Coffee machines gurgled to life. Marcus Chen, Clara's assistant, appeared in the doorway with his tablet and his ever-present efficiency, took one look at Ethan standing in Clara's office at 7 in the morning, and went very still. Marcus, Clara said calmly, please schedule an all-hands meeting for the creative department. 9 a.m., conference room A. May I ask what this is regarding? Regime change. Marcus's eyes widened fractionally, the most emotion Ethan had ever seen from the man. I'll send the invites. By 8:30, the rumors were already spreading. Ethan could feel them like a change in air pressure as he walked through the office. People stopped talking when he passed. Eyes tracked him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Julie, from accounts receivable, actually mouthed, "What did you do?" as he headed to his desk. His email was a disaster zone. 23 messages since midnight, most of them from team members on the Kellerman account demanding to know what was happening. 3 from department heads asking for clarification on concerning rumors. And 1 from Clara with a subject line that just read, "Buckle up." He opened it to find a single sentence. They're going to come for you. Let them. The conference room at 9 was standing room only. The entire creative department had turned out, along with several executives who'd heard enough whispers to justify their attendance. Ethan stood at the back, trying to be invisible, while Clara positioned herself at the front with the calm of someone about to deliver a sermon. Thank you all for coming on short notice, she began, her voice carrying that particular quality of authority she wielded like a scalpel. I'm sure you've heard various versions of what happened this weekend with the Kellerman account. I'm here to provide clarity. The room leaned forward collectively. On Friday night, Kellerman threatened to pull their account due to dissatisfaction with our current creative direction. Ethan Cole fielded the call in my absence and successfully retained the client with a promise of a completely revised campaign approach. As of this morning, Ethan and I will be co-leading the Kellerman account as equal creative partners with full authority to rebuild the campaign from the ground up. The silence that followed was profound. Then someone in the back, Stephen, one of the art directors who'd been on Kellerman from day one, stood up. "You're telling us that 3 months of work is being thrown out because Cole made promises he can't keep? I'm telling you that 3 months of safe, uninspired work is being replaced with something that actually reflects the client's brand values and market position." Clara's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room like winter wind. "If you have concerns about the new direction, you're welcome to review the creative brief Ethan prepared. If you still have concerns after that, you're welcome to request reassignment." "This is insane," Stephen said flatly. "He went over your head. He saved my ass," Clara interrupted. And the profanity from her mouth was so unexpected that Stephen actually stopped talking. "He made a judgment call during a crisis, and he was right. More right than I'd been in months of playing it safe. So either get on board with the new direction or get out of the way, because this campaign is happening with or without your blessing." Another hand went up. Rebecca from copywriting, someone Ethan had always liked, always thought of as an ally. "Is it true he did this at 3 a.m, that you were, unavailable?" The implication hung in the air, ugly and loaded. Clara smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I was dealing with a personal matter. Ethan handled a professional crisis with competence and creativity. Would you like to discuss this further, or would you like to keep your job?" Rebecca sat down hard. "Anyone else?" Clara surveyed the room with the calm of a general who'd already won the war and was just waiting for the stragglers to surrender. "No? Excellent. The revised brief will be distributed by end of day. First creative meeting is tomorrow at 8. If you're on this account, I expect to see concepts that take risks and tell truths. If that's not something you're capable of, find me a replacement who is." She dismissed them with a wave of her hand, and the exodus was swift and silent. Only Ethan remained, still standing at the back of the room, watching people file out while shooting him, looks that ranged from resentful to openly hostile. When the room was empty, Clara turned to him. "That went better than expected." "Better? They look like they want to murder me and make it look like an accident. They'll get over it, or they won't, and we'll find people who actually want to do good work instead of coast on mediocrity." She gathered her materials, her movements precise and controlled. "There's one more thing." "What?" "I'm having dinner with my therapist tonight. Emergency session to discuss why I thought getting drunk in public and trauma dumping on my employee and his child was a healthy coping mechanism." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing a dentist appointment. "She's going to have a field day with this." Ethan felt something in his chest loosen. "That's good, that you're talking to someone. Don't get sentimental on me, Cole. We've got 6 weeks to deliver a miracle. Save the emotions for the work." But she was smiling when she said it, and Ethan found himself smiling back. The rest of the day was chaos, but it was productive chaos. The creative brief went out at 2 p.m., and within an hour, Ethan's inbox was flooded with responses. Some were angry, some were confused, but a few, a surprising few, were excited. "This is what we should have been doing from the start," wrote Jessica from design. "When do we begin?" Finally came from Marcus in video production. "Something worth making." At 3 p.m., Ethan packed his laptop and headed for the door. Heads turned, whispers followed. He didn't care. He had a daughter to pick up, homework to supervise, dinner to make. His phone rang as he reached his car. "Clara, you left." "I told you I would." A pause. "How does it feel?" "Honestly, terrifying and amazing in equal measure." "Good," Clara said. "That means you're doing something that matters. See you tomorrow, partner." She hung up before he could respond, and Ethan stood in the parking lot holding his phone and grinning like an idiot because somewhere in the chaos of the last 72 hours, everything had shifted, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Mia was waiting by the school gate with her backpack almost bigger than she was, her face lighting up the moment she spotted Ethan's car. She climbed into the back seat with the practiced efficiency of a child who'd done this 1,000 times, buckling herself in before he could even ask. "How was your day, kiddo?" Good. We learned about fractions and I only got one wrong on the quiz. She paused, swinging her legs. How was yours? Did everyone at work hate you like you said they would? Ethan met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Pretty much, yeah. But you did the right thing anyway? I did the right thing anyway. Mia nodded, satisfied with this answer in the way only a 7-year-old could be. Mrs. Patterson says doing the right thing is hard, but that's what makes it count. Mrs. Patterson is a wise woman. They stopped for groceries on the way home, Mia helping him pick out vegetables she'd actually eat and lobbying hard for cookies that Ethan pretended to consider before adding to the cart. Normal things, routine things, the kind of mundane moments that kept him grounded when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. His phone buzzed while they were in the checkout line. A text from a number he didn't recognize at first, then realized was Stephen from the meeting. You made a lot of enemies today. Watch your back. Ethan deleted it without responding. There was nothing to say that wouldn't make things worse, and he was too tired to care about office politics when he had dinner to make, and a daughter who needed help with homework. They ate spaghetti at their small kitchen table, Mia chattering about her friend Emma's birthday party next weekend, and whether she thought Ethan would let her get her ears pierced when she turned 8. Normal conversation, safe topics. The kind of evening that reminded Ethan why he'd answered that call Friday night in the first place. Because this life, this simple, beautiful life with his daughter, was worth protecting at any cost. After Mia was in bed, Ethan opened his laptop and dove back into the Kellerman campaign. The brief had been just the beginning. Now came the hard part, translating concept into concrete creative executions that would either prove his instincts right or destroy his credibility entirely. He worked until midnight, building mood boards and sketching out campaign frameworks, reaching out to the photographer and videographer he'd contacted over the weekend. By the time he finally closed his computer, he had the skeleton of something that felt honest. Raw. Completely different from anything the agency had produced in recent memory. It was either going to be spectacular or it was going to get him fired. Possibly both. Tuesday's creative meeting started at 8 sharp. Ethan arrived at 7:45 to find Clara already in the conference room, surrounded by printouts and color swatches, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger, less armored. You look like you slept, she observed. 4 hours counts as sleep in my world. Ethan set down his coffee and materials. You? 3, but who's counting? She gestured to the walls where she'd already hung preliminary concepts. I took the liberty of starting visual development based on your brief. Tell me if I'm off base. Ethan studied the images she'd selected. Real athletes in mid-motion, faces showing effort and determination rather than the posed perfection of typical sports advertising. There was sweat. There was strain. There was authentic joy in the act of pushing the body beyond its limits. It was everything the previous campaign had been afraid to show. This is perfect, he said quietly. Don't sound so surprised. I was good at this once, before I forgot why I started doing it in the first place. Clara straightened one of the images that had gone slightly crooked. The team starts arriving in 10 minutes. Fair warning. At least 3 people requested transfers yesterday, and 2 more filed complaints with HR about the sudden change in leadership structure. Great, fantastic, exactly what I wanted to hear. Ethan. Clara turned to face him fully. This was always going to be hard. We're not just changing a campaign, we're challenging an entire culture of risk aversion that I spent 2 years building. People are going to fight back because it's comfortable to play it safe, and we're asking them to be brave. And if they won't be, then we find people who will. The team that filed into the conference room 15 minutes later was noticeably smaller than the group that had attended Monday's announcement. Some faces were missing. The ones who'd requested transfers or simply decided this wasn't a fight they wanted to be part of. The ones who remained looked wary, defensive, like soldiers who weren't sure if they were walking into an ambush. Jessica from design was there, along with Marcus from video production. Rebecca from copywriting had stayed, though her expression suggested she was reserving judgment. A few junior team members Ethan barely knew sat in the back, wide-eyed and clearly trying to figure out which side of this conflict would be safer to align with. Stephen was conspicuously absent. Thank you for being here, Clara began, and Ethan noticed she'd modulated her tone. Still authoritative, but less cutting, more collaborative. I know the last 48 hours have been chaotic. Change always is, especially when it happens fast. But I want to be clear about something. This isn't about politics or power plays. This is about doing work that matters. She clicked to the first slide, one of Ethan's core concepts. A young woman in worn-out Kellerman shoes, mid-stride on a cracked city sidewalk, her expression fierce with concentration. The tagline read, "We run where the pavement ends and the real work begins." Kellerman Athletics wasn't built in a boardroom, Clara continued. It was built in a garage by someone who believed that quality athletic gear shouldn't be a luxury. Every pair of shoes they make is a middle finger to the idea that you need to spend $300 to pursue your passion. And we've been selling them like they're just another option in a crowded market, instead of an alternative to the entire system. Jessica leaned forward, studying the image. This is a completely different visual language from what we've been developing. Because the visual language we were using was wrong, Ethan said, stepping up beside Clara. We were trying to make Kellerman look like Nike or Adidas. But Kellerman isn't those brands. It's the brand for people who can't afford those brands, or who are tired of what those brands represent. Our campaign should feel like a rebellion, not a resignation. That's a risky position, Rebecca said carefully. Alienating the mainstream market to appeal to a niche could backfire spectacularly. Or it could give Kellerman the authentic identity they've been missing, Marcus countered. He'd been quiet until now, but when he spoke, his voice carried conviction. I've been shooting corporate sports content for 5 years, and it all looks the same. Perfect lighting, perfect bodies, perfect moments that feel completely manufactured. This feels real. That's worth the risk. Easy for you to say when it's not your job on the line, someone from the back muttered. Clara's expression went cold. Everyone's job is on the line. That's what working in creative means. We either produce work we're proud of, or we produce work that gets forgotten the moment the campaign ends. I'm tired of being forgotten. The room went quiet. Here's how this is going to work, Clara continued, clicking to the next slide. We have 5 weeks and 4 days to deliver a complete campaign. Video, print, social, experiential. Ethan and I will be splitting responsibilities, but we need every person in this room functioning at their absolute best. That means honesty. If you think an idea is bad, say so. If you have a better approach, pitch it. But if you're going to stay on this team, I need you to be all in. Half measures aren't going to cut it. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. If you're here because you think this is impossible, leave now. If you're here because you want to prove that it is possible, let's get to work. Nobody moved. Good, Clara said. Let's talk execution. The next 2 hours were intense. They broke down the campaign into components. A hero video featuring real Kellerman customers telling their stories. A print series showcasing athletes in non-traditional training environments. A social media strategy built around user-generated content and authentic testimonials. Every idea was challenged, refined, rebuilt. Ethan found himself in heated debates with Jessica about visual tone, while Clara pushed back on Marcus's timeline with the ferocity of someone who'd memorized every excuse for why things couldn't be done and had decided to reject them all. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. By 10:30, they had a framework. Not a finished campaign, but a roadmap that felt achievable if everyone worked harder than they'd ever worked before. First round of concepts due Friday, Clara announced as the meeting broke up. And I want real work, not safe work. If I see anything that looks like it came from the previous campaign direction, I'm sending you back to start over. The team filed out, and Ethan caught Jessica hanging back, waiting until the room was empty. I just wanted to say, she started, then paused, choosing her words carefully. What you did this weekend, taking that call, rebuilding the brief, it took guts. And I'm glad someone finally pushed back on the safe approach. I've been here 3 years and I've watched us kill every interesting idea because we were too afraid of failure. You could have pushed back too, Ethan said gently. Yeah, but I'm not the one with a kid depending on me. You had more to lose and you did it anyway. She smiled, quick and genuine. That means something. She left before he could respond, and Ethan stood in the empty conference room, feeling like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to be a complete disaster. Clara appeared in the doorway. "You have that look." "What look?" "The look people get when they realize they might actually pull off the impossible thing they promised." She entered the room, starting to gather the materials they'd left scattered across the table. "Don't get cocky. We still have to execute, and execution is where most brilliant ideas go to die." Always with the encouragement, "I'm a realist." But she was smiling. "How's Mia?" The question caught Ethan off guard. In 2 years of working for Clara, she'd never once asked about his daughter, had barely acknowledged that he had a life outside the office beyond the inconvenient way it occasionally interfered with his availability. "She's good. Asked me this morning if you got your elephant out of storage yet." Clara's hand stilled on the papers she was organizing. "Not yet. I called the storage facility. Apparently I'm 3 months behind on the bill, and they've been trying to reach me." "Clara said, I know what it looks like. I just..." She set down the papers, staring at them without really seeing them. "It's been easier to pretend that part of my life didn't exist. That Emma and the marriage and the life I had before were just a dream I woke up from. The elephant is real. It makes it all real. Maybe real is better than pretending. Maybe." She looked up at him, and there was a vulnerability in her expression that still felt shocking coming from a woman who'd built her reputation on being impenetrable. "Thank you, by the way, for not treating me differently after Friday night. I was terrified you'd either walk on eggshells or lose all respect for me. You saved a multi-million-dollar account while hungover and emotionally devastated. That's not weakness. That's something else entirely." Clara laughed, surprised and genuine. "Stubborn stupidity?" "I was going to say resilience, but sure, we can go with your version." His phone buzzed, a text from Mia's school. "Hi, Mr. Cole, just a reminder that parent-teacher conferences are next week. Please schedule your appointment at your earliest convenience." Ethan cursed softly. Between the Kellerman chaos and everything else, he'd completely forgotten. "Problem?" Clara asked. "Parent-teacher conference. I need to schedule it, but next week is going to be insane with the campaign development." "What day works best for you?" "Clara, you don't have to, Ethan, what day works best for you?" He checked the email again. "Thursday afternoon, 3:30. Clara pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Done. You're blocked out from 3 to 5 next Thursday. Anyone who has a problem with it can bring it to me." "You know this is going to fuel the rumors that I'm getting special treatment." "You are getting special treatment. You're being treated like a human being with responsibilities outside of work. If that's considered special, we've got bigger problems." She finished gathering her materials. "I'm going to work from home this afternoon. I need to make some calls that I'd rather not have the entire office overhearing. Everything okay?" "I'm calling the storage facility, going to pay the bill and schedule a time to go through Emma's things." Clara said it quickly, like if she slowed down she might lose her nerve. "My therapist thinks I've been avoiding it for too long, that I can't move forward if I'm still running from the past." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he settled for simple honesty. "Do you want company?" "I don't have to be there, but if you'd rather not do it alone..." "No." She cut him off, then softened. "Thank you, but this is something I need to do by myself. Some dragons you have to face solo." She left, and Ethan spent the rest of the afternoon buried in work, reaching out to potential interview subjects for the campaign video, coordinating with Marcus on filming schedules, and reviewing the design concepts Jessica had already started developing despite having less than a day to work on them. At 3 o'clock, he packed up his laptop and headed for the door. Heads still turned, whispers still followed, but fewer than yesterday. Either people were getting used to his new schedule, or they were getting tired of caring. Ethan wasn't sure which, and he was too busy to worry about it. Mia had art club after school, which meant Ethan had an extra hour to work from a coffee shop near the school, answering emails and fine-tuning campaign messaging until his phone alarm reminded him it was time to pick her up. She emerged from the building covered in paint. Somehow she'd gotten green streaks in her hair and what looked like an entire handprint of blue on her left cheek, and beaming like she'd just won the lottery. "We made self-portraits," she announced, climbing into the car. Mine has a dragon in the background because Mrs. Chen said we could add things that represent us, and I like dragons. Makes sense to me. Also, Emma R. said her mom is getting married again, and she has to be a flower girl and wear a dress she hates. Mia wrinkled her nose. I told her that sounds terrible, and she should put a frog in the dress so she doesn't have to wear it. Mia, I'm kidding, mostly. She grinned, gap-toothed, and completely unrepentant. Daddy, can I ask you something? Always. Is Miss Clara our friend now? Ethan considered the question while navigating traffic. I think she's trying to be. Why? Because friends help each other, and she helped you with work, and you helped her when she was sad. So that sounds like friends to me. Mia kicked her feet against the seat. I think she needs more friends. Her apartment was really pretty, but it was really lonely. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. You're probably right, kiddo. They made tacos for dinner, Mia's current favorite food, and she told him about the book her class was reading while cheese melted and tortillas warmed. Normal. Grounding. The kind of evening that reminded Ethan that no matter how chaotic work became, this was what actually mattered. After Mia was asleep, Ethan returned to his laptop and found an email from Clara, time-stamped 7:43 p.m. The subject line was simple: progress. He opened it to find a single photo, a stuffed elephant, gray, worn, one ear slightly more threadbare than the other, sitting on what looked like Clara's pristine white couch. It looked out of place and perfect at the same time. Below the image, a message. His name is Winston. Emma named him when she was 4. I forgot how much I missed him. Ethan sat back, staring at the photo, feeling something shift in his understanding of the woman who'd terrorized him for 2 years. She wasn't becoming a different person. She was remembering who she'd been before grief had turned her into armor and sharp edges. He typed back, Winston is an excellent name. Glad he's out of storage. Her response came immediately. Don't get sentimental on me, Cole. We still have a campaign to build and a deadline to meet. But she attached another photo, this one of her desk at home, covered in sketches and notes, Winston visible in the background. Working hard, but not alone anymore. Ethan smiled and got back to work. The rest of the week blurred together in a chaos of creative development and rapid iteration. Jessica delivered design concepts that made Ethan's heart race. Stark, honest images that felt more like documentary photography than advertising. Marcus assembled a shooting schedule that was aggressive but achievable, lining up interview subjects who were excited to share their stories about why Kellerman mattered to them. Rebecca, who'd been skeptical at first, came through with copy that was sharp and unapologetic. Her tagline for the print campaign, "Run your race, not theirs," became the rallying cry for the entire project. By Friday afternoon, they had enough material to present to Kellerman for preliminary approval. Clara scheduled the call for 4 o'clock, and the entire team gathered in the conference room with the nervous energy of students waiting for exam results. Kellerman's face appeared on the screen, his expression unreadable. For 30 seconds, he didn't say anything, just studied the concepts they'd presented with the focus of someone evaluating whether to buy a house or burn it down. Then he started laughing. Ethan's stomach dropped. Clara went very still beside him. "This is insane," Kellerman said, still laughing. "This is completely insane, and it's exactly what I've been trying to get someone to understand for 5 years. He leaned forward, his expression intense. "This doesn't look like an ad campaign. It looks like a movement." The conference room collectively exhaled. "You actually listened," Kellerman continued, "not just to what I was saying, but to what I was trying to build. Do you know how rare that is? How many agencies have pitched me campaigns that look like they could be for any athletic brand, just with my logo slapped on?" "Too many," Clara said dryly. "Way too many. But this?" He gestured at the screen. "This is mine. This is what my company is supposed to feel like. When can we see the full execution?" 3 weeks, Ethan said, before his brain could catch up with his mouth. "We'll have video rough cuts, final print layouts, and a complete social strategy." Clara shot him a look that clearly communicated, "Are you insane?" but didn't contradict him. 3 weeks, Kellerman repeated. "That's ambitious. That's what you're paying for." Kellerman grinned. "I like you, Cole. Don't screw this up." The call ended, and the room erupted. Jessica hugged Marcus. Rebecca actually smiled, genuine and unreserved. The junior team members looked at each other with expressions that suggested they'd just witnessed something they'd be talking about for years. Clara stood, and the room quieted. 3 weeks is going to be hell. We're going to work harder than we've ever worked. Some of you are going to want to quit. Some of you are going to hate me by the end of this. She paused, meeting each person's eyes. But we're going to make something that matters. So go home, get some rest this weekend, and come back Monday ready to prove that we're not just another agency churning out forgettable work. The team dispersed, energized despite the exhaustion. Ethan started gathering his materials when Clara touched his arm. 3 weeks? Are you trying to kill us? I'm trying to prove that we can do what everyone else said was impossible. Well, you've certainly committed us to it now. But she was smiling. Go pick up your daughter. And Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. For pushing me. For believing this could work when I was too scared to try. Ethan wanted to say something profound, something that would capture the strange alchemy of the last week, how a 2 a.m. phone call had transformed into a partnership that felt more real than anything he'd experienced in his professional life. But Clara was already walking away, and maybe some things didn't need to be said out loud to be understood. He picked up Mia, and they went out for pizza to celebrate, even though she didn't fully understand what they were celebrating. She just knew Daddy looked happy in a way he hadn't in months, and that was enough. Saturday morning, Ethan woke to a text from Clara. Brunch? My treat. Bring Mia. He stared at the message, convinced he was still dreaming. Clara Hale didn't do brunch. Clara Hale barely did meals that weren't consumed at her desk while simultaneously on a conference call. You're serious, he texted back. Completely. There's a place near my apartment that makes incredible pancakes, and I've been thinking about something Winston said. Winston talks now. Don't be cute. Be here at 10. She sent an address, and Ethan found himself getting Mia ready for what was possibly the strangest social invitation he'd ever received. The restaurant was tucked into a corner of the Meridian District, the kind of place that looked unassuming from the outside but was packed with people who knew good food when they found it. Clara was already there, sitting at a table by the window, wearing jeans and a simple sweater that made her look like a completely different person from the executive who commanded boardrooms. Winston sat on the seat beside her. Mia's eyes went wide. You brought him. He wanted to see you again, Clara said seriously. Apparently, he's been asking about Mr. Trunk. Mia climbed into the booth and immediately started arranging the 2 stuffed animals like they were having their own conversation. Clara watched with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read, something between pain and wonder. Thank you for coming, Clara said once they'd ordered. I know this is weird. It's different, Ethan allowed, but not bad. I've been thinking about what you said, about getting Winston out of storage, about making space for the past instead of running from it. She fidgeted with her coffee cup, a nervous gesture that looked foreign on her. My therapist suggested I start trying to build connections outside of work. Real connections, not just professional relationships. I realize the only people I've been honest with lately are you and your daughter, which is either very healthy or deeply concerning. Could be both. That's what my therapist said, Clara smiled. Anyway, I wanted to do something normal, have a meal, talk about things that aren't work-related. Try to remember how to be a person instead of just a position. Mia looked up from where she was making Winston and Mr. Trunk shake hands. Can we get chocolate chip pancakes? Absolutely, Clara said, and I'm told they have bacon that's so good it should probably be illegal. They talked about nothing important, about Mia's upcoming birthday, about Clara's brief, disastrous attempt to learn piano as an adult, about Ethan's growing collection of half-finished short stories that he someday hoped to complete. Normal conversation. The kind of easy exchange that happened between people who were becoming friends instead of just colleagues. And when Clara talked about Emma, carefully, tentatively, like she was testing whether she could say the name without breaking, Mia listened with the solemn attention of someone who understood that some stories needed to be heard. She would have liked you, Clara told Mia. You have the same terrible sense of humor and the same inability to sit still. Did she like elephants too? She loved them. We went to the zoo every month just to visit the elephant exhibit. Winston was her favorite thing in the world. Clara's voice wavered but held. Thank you for letting me borrow Mr. Trunk. It helped more than you know. You can borrow him again if you need to, Mia said generously. Friends share. Clara's eyes went bright, and she excused herself to the bathroom. Ethan watched her go, then looked at his daughter, who was calmly eating pancakes like she hadn't just said something that had clearly undone a grown woman. That was very kind, Mia. She shrugged. She's sad. Sad people need friends. That's just how it works. When Clara returned, her eyes were red, but her composure was intact. They finished brunch talking about lighter things, and when they said goodbye on the sidewalk, Clara did something that shocked them both. She hugged Mia, quick and careful, like she was afraid she might break something precious. See you Monday, she told Ethan, and thank you for this, for everything. She walked away before he could respond, and Ethan stood there with his daughter's hand in his, watching Clara disappear into the crowd and wondering how his life had become this strange, complicated, unexpectedly hopeful thing. Monday arrived with the weight of the 3-week deadline pressing down like an avalanche waiting to fall. But when Ethan walked into the office, he found a new photo on his desk. Clara, Mia, and him at brunch, taken by their server at Clara's request. She'd printed it, framed it, and added a note, to new beginnings and better choices. See, he set it next to the photo of him and Mia and got to work. The 3 weeks that followed tested every assumption Ethan had ever made about human endurance and the limits of creative possibility. The office transformed into something between a war room and an artist's studio, walls covered with storyboards and concept sketches, whiteboards filled with timelines that got erased and redrawn daily as reality collided with ambition. Marcus practically moved into the editing suite, surviving on energy drinks and the kind of obsessive focus that came from working on something that felt genuinely important. Jessica's design station became a shrine to iteration, each version slightly better than the last, each refinement bringing them closer to something that didn't just look good, but felt true. Ethan found himself working hours he hadn't worked since Mia was a baby, the difference being that now he didn't feel guilty about it. Claire had meant what she said about flexibility. When he needed to leave at 3 to pick up Mia, he left. When he needed to work from home because she had a half day at school, he worked from home. And when he needed to bring her to the office on a Saturday because his usual babysitter canceled, Clara showed up with coloring books and an intensity of focus that suggested she'd researched age-appropriate activities with the same diligence she applied to creative strategy. She can use my office, Clara had said, setting up a small workstation with markers and paper. The couch is more comfortable than those terrible chairs in the break room, and she'll have privacy if she needs a nap. Mia had looked at Ethan with wide eyes, clearly understanding that being allowed in Clara's private office was equivalent to being granted access to a sacred temple. She'd worked on her drawings with unusual solemnity, occasionally bringing them out to show Clara her latest masterpiece, a family portrait that included Ethan, Mia, Mr. Trunk, Clara, and Winston all holding hands under a rainbow. Clara had stared at that drawing for a long moment before carefully taping it to her wall right next to her degrees and professional certifications. That's my favorite piece of art in this entire building, she'd said, completely serious. The campaign was coming together in pieces, like a puzzle assembled by people who weren't entirely sure what the final image was supposed to look like but trusted the process anyway. The video interviews were raw and powerful, real people talking about what Kellerman meant to them, why they'd chosen a brand that didn't have celebrity endorsements or Super Bowl commercials. A single mother who'd bought her first pair of running shoes from Kellerman because they were the only ones she could afford and had gone on to complete 3 marathons. A high school coach who equipped his entire track team with Kellerman gear because he believed in supporting companies that valued accessibility over prestige. A college student who wore Kellerman shoes to her engineering classes as a reminder that she didn't need expensive things to prove her worth. Their stories were messy and human and completely at odds with the polished narratives that dominated athletic advertising. They were also, Ethan was increasingly convinced, exactly what the world needed to hear. This is either going to revolutionize how we think about sports marketing, or it's going to be a spectacular failure that people study in business schools as a cautionary tale, Rebecca said one evening, reviewing the rough cut of the hero video. Can it be both? Marcus asked, not looking up from his editing timeline. Historically, yes. Clara appeared in the doorway, carrying a bag from the Thai place down the street. She'd started doing this, showing up with food when the team was working late, claiming she'd ordered too much for herself and didn't want it to go to waste. Everyone knew it was a lie. Nobody called her on it. "Eat," she commanded, distributing containers. "You can't do good work if you're running on fumes and spite." "I thought spite was the primary fuel source for creative professionals," Jessica said, accepting pad thai with gratitude. Spite and Thai food. There's a balance. Clara settled into a chair, watching the video play on Marcus's screen. "The pacing on the second act is dragging. Cut another 15 seconds. I already cut 20. Cut 15 more, trust me." Marcus made the adjustments, and Clara was right. The tighter pacing gave the story more urgency, more emotional punch. She had an instinct for this that went beyond technical skill, a kind of visceral understanding of how to manipulate emotion through structure and timing. "You're really good at this," Ethan said quietly, sitting beside her while the others debated the merits of different color grades. "I used to be," Clara corrected, "before I decided that being good was less important than being safe." "What changed?" She looked at him, and there was something vulnerable in her expression that he was beginning to recognize as her default setting when the armor was down. "You showed up at 3 in the morning. You brought your daughter. You saved my account and didn't ask for anything in return. You made me remember that sometimes the right choice is the hard choice, and the hard choice is worth making." "I just answered the phone." "You did a lot more than that, and we both know it." Clara stood, gathering empty containers. "The parent-teacher conference is Thursday. You're still blocked out, and if anyone has a problem with it, they can schedule a meeting with me to discuss their opinions on work-life balance." Thursday arrived faster than Ethan expected, carried forward on a wave of deadlines and details that consumed every available hour. He left the office at 2:45, ignoring the pointed look from one of the senior account managers who'd never forgiven him for the Kellerman situation, and made it to Mia's school with 10 minutes to spare. Mrs. Patterson was exactly the kind of teacher every parent hoped their child would have. Warm, observant, genuinely invested in her students' growth. She welcomed Ethan into her classroom, which was covered in student artwork and motivational posters about perseverance and kindness. "Mia is a joy," Mrs. Patterson began, which immediately made Ethan relax. Teachers who led with compliments rarely followed with devastating critiques. "She's reading above grade level, her math skills are solid, and she's one of the most empathetic children I've ever taught." "That's wonderful to hear. There is one thing I wanted to discuss, though." Mrs. Patterson pulled out a folder containing several of Mia's recent drawings. "She's been drawing a lot of family pictures lately, which is completely normal for her age, but I noticed she started including a woman who isn't you or her mother." Ethan looked at the drawings. There was the one from Clara's office, him, Mia, Clara, and the elephants, and others. Clara helping Mia with homework, Clara and Mia baking cookies, Clara reading to Mia before bed. None of these things had actually happened, but they were clearly important to his daughter. "That's my boss," Ethan said carefully. "We've been spending more time together recently. Work stuff mostly, but Mia's been around for some of it." "Is this someone who's becoming a significant part of Mia's life?" The question was asked gently, without judgment, but Ethan felt the weight of it anyway. Was Clara becoming a significant part of their lives? 2 months ago, she'd been the boss he avoided whenever possible. Now she was the woman who brought food when they worked late, who'd hugged his daughter at brunch, who'd put Mia's artwork on her office wall like it was a priceless masterpiece. "Yes," Ethan said, surprised by his own certainty. "I think she is." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Then I'm glad. Mia talks about her a lot, about how she was sad but is getting happier, about how she lost her daughter but is learning to remember without it hurting so much." She paused. "Your daughter has a remarkable capacity for understanding emotional complexity. She's going to do important things with that gift." Ethan left the conference feeling like he'd been given a perspective shift he hadn't known he needed. Mia wasn't just tolerating Clara's presence in their lives. She was actively creating space for her, imagining a future where Clara belonged in their family constellation. The question was whether Clara was ready for that kind of belonging. He picked up Mia from after-school care and took her out for ice cream, a Thursday tradition they'd established when she was 5 and had never quite abandoned. Mrs. Patterson showed me your drawings, Ethan said, watching Mia attack a cone of mint chocolate chip. Did she like them? She loved them, but I noticed you drew a lot of pictures with Miss Clara in them. Mia licked ice cream off her fingers, unconcerned. She's important. Important how? Important like family. She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. She doesn't have a family anymore, and we have room in ours, so it makes sense. Mia, it's not quite that simple. Why not? And there was the question that Ethan didn't have a good answer for. Why wasn't it that simple? Yes, Clara was his boss, and yes, there were professional complications and power dynamics, and a dozen other reasons why getting too close could be problematic. But underneath all of that was a simpler truth. Clara was a person who'd suffered devastating loss, and they had the capacity to offer her something she desperately needed. Connection, belonging, a place to exist outside the armor she'd built from grief. You're right, Ethan said finally. It should be that simple. Mia grinned, triumphant, and went back to her ice cream. The following week was a blur of final revisions and escalating stress. The Kellerman presentation was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m., which gave them exactly 4 days to finalize everything, and every hour revealed some new crisis that threatened to derail the entire project. The printer for the physical mock-ups broke down. Marcus's editing software crashed and took 6 hours of work with it. One of the interview subjects got cold feet about appearing in the campaign and had to be gently convinced that her story mattered. Jessica came down with the flu and had to work from home, directing design changes via video call while looking like death warmed over. Through it all, Clara was a force of nature, solving problems, managing crises, keeping the team focused when panic threatened to overwhelm them. But Ethan noticed the small things too. The way she checked in with each team member individually, asking about their well-being and not just their deliverables. The way she'd started keeping granola bars in her office for people who forgot to eat lunch. The way she'd personally called Jessica's doctor to arrange for a prescription delivery when Jessica was too sick to leave her apartment. She was learning to lead with compassion instead of fear, and the team was responding. People worked harder, not because they were afraid of disappointing her, but because they wanted to make her proud. Wednesday night, Ethan was at home reviewing the final video cut when his doorbell rang. It was almost 9, and he wasn't expecting anyone. He found Clara on his doorstep, holding a grocery bag and looking uncertain in a way that immediately put him on alert. Is everything okay? Define okay. She held up the bag. I made soup. Well, I attempted to make soup. My therapist suggested I try doing normal domestic things that don't involve work or grief, and apparently cooking is on that list. I may have drastically overestimated how much one person can eat, so I thought. She trailed off, and Ethan realized she was nervous. Clara Hale, who commanded boardrooms and intimidated executives, was nervous about offering him soup. Come in, he said, stepping aside. His apartment was a stark contrast to Clara's pristine high-rise, smaller, cluttered with the comfortable chaos of a life actually being lived. Mia's backpack was on the couch, homework scattered across the coffee table. Children's books were stacked on every available surface. The whole place smelled like the spaghetti he'd made for dinner and the lavender detergent he used for laundry. It was home in all its imperfect glory. Clara looked around with an expression he couldn't quite read. This is nice. It's a mess. It's lived in. There's a difference. She set the soup on the kitchen counter. Where's Mia? Asleep, or pretending to be asleep so she can read under the covers. It's a 50-50 chance on any given night. Clara smiled. Emma used to do that. I'd check on her an hour after bedtime and find her with a flashlight and whatever book she'd become obsessed with that week. Do you want to say hi? I know she'd be thrilled to see you, even if she's supposed to be sleeping. For a moment, Clara looked terrified, like he'd suggested she defuse a bomb. Then she nodded, following him down the short hallway to Mia's room. The door was cracked open, and sure enough, there was the telltale glow of a flashlight coming from under the covers. Ethan pushed the door open fully, and Mia's head popped up, eyes wide with the guilt of someone caught in the act. Daddy, I was just... She stopped when she saw Clara. Miss Clara. Hey, kiddo. Clara moved into the room, settling on the edge of Mia's bed with a naturalness that suggested she'd done this before, in another life. What are you reading? Mia held up a book about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. It's really good. The main character has a raccoon friend named Bandit, and they go on adventures. That sounds excellent. Clara glanced at Ethan. May I? He nodded, not entirely sure what he was agreeing to, but trusting it anyway. Clara took the book from Mia and began to read, her voice softer than Ethan had ever heard it, gentle and warm, and nothing like the clipped professional tone she used at work. Mia settled against her pillows, eyes fixed on Clara with the kind of contentment that came from feeling safe and valued. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching this scene unfold, and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't his boss reading to his daughter. This was Clara, just Clara, sharing a moment of simple kindness with a child who'd decided she mattered. After 2 chapters, Mia's eyes started to droop. Clara set the book aside, tucking the blankets around Mia with the muscle memory of someone who'd performed this ritual countless times before. Sweet dreams, Clara whispered. Will you come back and read more tomorrow? Mia asked, already half asleep. If your dad says it's okay. It's okay, Mia mumbled. You're family now. Clara's breath caught, audible in the quiet room. She looked at Ethan, her eyes bright with unshed tears, and he nodded. Then I'll come back, Clara promised. They left Mia to sleep and returned to the kitchen, where Clara's soup sat cooling on the counter. Ethan heated 2 bowls while Clara stood by the window, looking out at the modest view of other apartment buildings and a slice of street below. I didn't expect that to feel so... She paused, searching for the word. Normal? Ethan suggested, handing her a bowl. Devastating and healing in equal measure. Clara accepted the soup, staring into it like it might hold answers. I haven't read to a child in 3 years. I thought it would hurt too much, that it would be this painful reminder of everything I lost. But it wasn't. It was just sweet. Mia has that effect on people. It's not just Mia. Clara met his eyes. It's you. The way you've built this life, the way you've made space for joy even when things are hard. The way you didn't let work consume everything, even when I tried to make it. She set down her soup, untouched. I need to tell you something. Ethan's heart rate picked up. Okay. The board is promoting me. Executive Vice President, effective next month. It's a big jump, bigger responsibility, more oversight on all the creative departments. She paused. They offered me the position 2 weeks ago, and I've been trying to figure out how to tell you because it changes things. Changes things how? I'll have more power to make structural changes, to shift how we approach risk and creativity across the entire agency, to implement policies around work-life balance and flexible schedules that actually mean something. Clara's hands twisted together, a nervous gesture that looked foreign on her. And I recommended you for Senior Creative Director, the position I should have given you 2 years ago. Ethan felt the words land without fully processing them. Senior Creative Director. The position he'd wanted, had been passed over for, had stopped believing he'd ever achieve. Clara, I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll help me rebuild this place into somewhere people actually want to work, instead of somewhere they endure. Say you'll keep calling me out when I start retreating into old patterns, because I will, and I need someone who won't let me get away with it. What if I make mistakes? What if I'm not ready? Then you'll make mistakes and you'll learn from them, which is exactly what leadership is supposed to look like. Clara stepped closer. Ethan, you saved a multi-million-dollar account with nothing but instinct and courage. You've spent the last 3 weeks proving that taking creative risks leads to better work. You've shown me that it's possible to be both an excellent professional and a present parent. If you're not ready for this, then none of us are ready for anything. Ethan thought about Mia, asleep down the hall, about the life he'd built in this small apartment with its comfortable chaos, about the choice he'd made to answer a phone call at 2 a.m., even when he had every reason not to. I'll take it, he said, on one condition. What? You keep showing up, not just at work, but here, in this life Mia's decided you're part of. You have dinner with us. You read bedtime stories. You let yourself be part of something that isn't about achievement or productivity, or proving you're okay when you're not. Claire's eyes went glassy. That's a lot to ask. You asked me to save your account in the middle of the night. I think you can handle soup and bedtime stories." She laughed, watery and genuine. "When you put it that way." They ate soup that was actually pretty good, considering Clara had claimed to be a disaster in the kitchen. They talked about the campaign, about the presentation coming up, about the changes they wanted to make to the agency culture. But they also talked about smaller things: Clara's ongoing therapy sessions, Ethan's abandoned short stories, Mia's upcoming birthday party, and whether 8 was too young for the science kit Ethan was considering buying her. Normal conversation, the kind that happened between people who were becoming more than colleagues, something closer to friends, or maybe something else entirely that neither of them was quite ready to name. When Clara left close to midnight, she paused in the doorway. "Thank you for letting me be part of this. I didn't realize how much I needed it until tonight." "You're welcome here any time, you know that, right?" "I'm starting to." She smiled, tired but real. "See you tomorrow, partner." Friday arrived with the weight of everything riding on a single 2-hour presentation. The team gathered in the main conference room at noon, doing final checks and fighting off the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing you'd done everything possible and now had to trust it was enough. Kellerman joined the call at exactly 2 p.m., his face filling the screen with an expression that gave nothing away. Clara stood at the front of the room, Ethan beside her, the rest of the team arranged behind them like soldiers going into battle. "Mr. Kellerman," Clara began, "3 weeks ago, you challenged us to create something that actually reflected your brand values instead of playing it safe. What you're about to see is our answer to that challenge." They played the hero video first. 3 minutes of raw, honest testimonials from real Kellerman customers, their stories woven together with footage of them actually using the products, running through city streets at dawn, coaching high school athletes in worn-out gyms, studying late into the night with Kellerman shoes kicked off under the desk. The tagline appeared at the end: "Run your race, not theirs." Kellerman watched in silence. When the video ended, he still didn't speak. Clara continued, walking him through the print campaign, the social strategy, the experiential marketing plan that would bring Kellerman athletes into schools and community centers to talk about accessibility and authenticity in sports. Every element built on the same core message. The Kellerman wasn't trying to compete with the big brands on their terms, but was offering something entirely different for people who valued substance over status. When they finished, the silence stretched long enough that Ethan started mentally updating his resume. Then Kellerman leaned back in his chair and started clapping. Slow at first, then faster, until he was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "That," he said, "is exactly what I've been waiting for someone to understand. Not just about my company, but about why I built it in the first place." He pointed at the screen. "This doesn't look like an ad. It looks like a manifesto. It looks like something people are going to remember 10 years from now when they think about brands that actually stood for something." The team erupted. Jessica hugged Marcus. Rebecca actually cheered. The junior members looked at each other like they'd just witnessed history being made. "We launch in 2 weeks, Kellerman continued, "and I want you leading the implementation, not some account team that's going to water it down. This is too important to screw up." "We'll be there every step of the way," Clara promised. The call ended and the room exploded into celebration. Someone broke out champagne that had been optimistically hidden in the break room fridge. Toasts were made. Clara gave a speech about the power of taking risks that made half the team cry. Ethan found himself at the center of a group hug that included people who'd hated him just 3 weeks ago. In the chaos, Clara caught his eye across the room. She mouthed 2 words: "Thank you." He mouthed back, "Partner." The celebration continued into the evening, but Ethan left at 6 to pick up Mia, who'd been promised ice cream and a movie if she survived being patient while Daddy had his important presentation. Clara had offered to come with him, but he'd insisted she stay and accept the congratulations she'd earned. "I'll come by later," she'd said, "if that's okay. I promised Mia more bedtime stories, and I don't break promises to 7-year-olds. She showed up at 8:30 with takeout from Mia's favorite Thai place and a small wrapped package. Mia tore into it with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been personally victimized by delayed gratification, revealing a hardcover copy of the book Clara had been reading to her. "So we can read it together," Clara explained. "And so you don't have to use a flashlight under the covers, which is terrible for your eyes." Mia launched herself at Clara with a hug that nearly knocked them both over, and Ethan watched his boss, his partner, his friend, the woman who was slowly becoming part of their family, hold his daughter like she was something precious and irreplaceable. Later, after Mia was asleep and they were sitting on Ethan's worn-out couch drinking tea, Clara said quietly, "I got Winston out of storage last week, the elephant, but I also found Emma's other things, her clothes, her toys, her artwork." She stared into her mug. "My therapist thinks I should keep some of it. Make space for the memories instead of locking them away." "What do you think?" "I think I'm terrified of forgetting her, but more terrified of being consumed by the memory. I think I've spent 3 years running from grief, and I'm exhausted." She looked at him. "I think I need help figuring out how to live with loss instead of being destroyed by it." "You're already doing it," Ethan said gently. "You're here. You're letting yourself care about people again. You're building something new instead of just protecting the ruins of what you lost." Claire's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "Mia said I'm family now." She did. "Is that okay with you?" Ethan considered the question, thought about everything that had changed since that 2 a.m. phone call, about how kindness had transformed into partnership, partnership into friendship, and friendship into something that felt like it might be growing into more. "Yeah," he said. "It's more than okay." Clara smiled, tentative and hopeful, and Ethan thought that maybe this was what healing looked like. Not a dramatic transformation, but a series of small, brave choices to let people in, to build new connections, to risk caring even when caring meant risking loss. They sat together in comfortable silence while the city hummed outside, two people who'd found their way to each other through crisis and courage, building something neither of them had expected but both of them desperately needed. The Kellerman campaign launched on a Tuesday in late March, and by Thursday, it had become the kind of viral sensation that marketing executives dream about and rarely achieve. The hero video racked up 2 million views in the first 48 hours, not because of paid promotion, but because people genuinely wanted to share it. The hashtag #RunYourRace started trending organically, with users posting their own stories about choosing authenticity over status, substance over brand names. Kellerman's sales jumped 37% in the first week alone. The industry press descended like hungry wolves, everyone wanting to know how a mid-tier athletic brand had suddenly become a cultural touchstone. Clara fielded interview requests with the grace of someone who'd been preparing for this moment her entire career, but she made sure every article mentioned Ethan by name, crediting him as the creative force behind the campaign's emotional core. "You're making me famous," Ethan said one morning, scrolling through yet another profile that quoted him extensively about the importance of authentic storytelling. "I'm making you accurately credited," Clara corrected, not looking up from her own laptop. They were working in her office, an arrangement that had become routine over the past month. Her space had transformed subtly. Winston sat on the credenza, visible to anyone who entered. Emma's artwork, carefully framed, hung beside Mia's rainbow family portrait. The sterile executive suite had become something warmer, more human. "The board wants to meet with us next Tuesday," Clara continued. "They're thrilled with the Kellerman results and want to discuss expanding our approach to other accounts." "Expanding how?" "Giving us more autonomy to pursue creative risk across the agency. Essentially, they want to know if we can replicate this success with other clients." Clara finally looked up, her expression complicated. "It's an opportunity to fundamentally change how this place operates. It's also terrifying." "Since when has terrifying stopped you?" "Since I learned that failure doesn't just affect me anymore. I have a team counting on me, a partner who's staked his career on this approach. She hesitated. "A life outside of work that I actually care about preserving." Ethan understood what she wasn't saying. The stakes had changed. This wasn't just about professional achievement anymore. It was about protecting the fragile ecosystem they'd built, the creative partnership that had become friendship, the friendship that was slowly, carefully becoming something more complicated and precious. His phone buzzed with a text from Mia's school. "Mr. Cole, Mia is in the nurse's office with a fever. Please pick up at your earliest convenience." Clara saw his expression change. "Go, I'll handle the Brennan meeting." "Clara, that's a major pitch, and you're a father first. Go get your daughter." She was already pulling up her calendar, rearranging the afternoon. I'll reschedule the internal review to tomorrow and handle Brennan solo. It's not a problem. Ethan wanted to argue, but Mia needed him, and Clara had made it clear months ago that this was non-negotiable. He grabbed his jacket and laptop, pausing at the door. Thank you. That's what partners do, Clara said simply. Now go. And text me updates so I know she's okay. He found Mia curled up on the nurse's cot, looking small and miserable with a thermometer sticking out of her mouth. Her temperature was 101.3, high enough to warrant taking her home, but not high enough to panic about. Hey, baby girl, Ethan said softly, brushing hair from her forehead. Feeling pretty lousy? Mia nodded, her eyes glassy with fever. My throat hurts and everything is cold, but also hot at the same time. That's the fever talking. Let's get you home and comfortable, okay? He signed her out, carried her to the car despite her half-hearted protests that she was too big to be carried, and drove home while she dozed in the back seat. By the time they arrived, her temperature had climbed to 101.8, and Ethan was running through the mental checklist of fever management, ibuprofen, fluids, cool compress, monitor for changes. He got Mia settled on the couch with her favorite blanket, and Mr. Trunk dosed her with medicine and was setting up a makeshift sick station with water, tissues, and the thermometer when his doorbell rang. Clara stood on his doorstep holding a pharmacy bag and a container of homemade chicken soup. Before you ask, Marcus told me you left to get Mia, and I figured she was sick since that's the only reason you'd leave in the middle of the day. Clara held up the bag. I have popsicles for the sore throat. Children's ibuprofen in case you're running low, and soup that I actually successfully made this time without setting off the smoke alarm. Ethan stared at her, something warm and overwhelming expanding in his chest. You left work to bring soup to my sick kid? I delegated the Brennan meeting to Rebecca, who's been wanting more client-facing experience anyway. And yes, obviously, Mia's sick. You need support. This is what people do. Clara stepped inside, setting her supplies on the kitchen counter with practiced efficiency. How's her temperature? 101.8 last check. So monitoring but not emergency room territory. Good. Clara moved into the living room where Mia was sprawled on the couch, looking at her with fever-bright eyes. Miss Clara, Mia croaked. You came. Of course I came. I heard you weren't feeling well. Clara knelt beside the couch, pressing the back of her hand to Mia's forehead in the universal gesture of parents assessing fever. Your dad's taking good care of you? The best care, but I'm still hot and cold at the same time, and my throat feels like I swallowed sandpaper. I brought popsicles, cherry, which I'm told is the superior sick day flavor. Mia's face brightened marginally. Can I have one now? Clara looked at Ethan for permission. He nodded, and she retrieved a popsicle from the freezer, unwrapping it and handing it to Mia with the solemnity of someone presenting a sacred artifact. Small bites, Clara instructed. It'll help with the throat pain and keep you hydrated. She settled on the floor beside the couch, and Ethan watched this woman who'd once fired someone via email while getting her appendix removed transform into something gentler, more tender. She adjusted Mia's blanket. She queued up a kids' movie on the TV. She sat there, present and unhurried, like she had nowhere else in the world she needed to be. You should go back to work, Ethan said, even though everything in him wanted her to stay. Why? So I can sit in meetings about quarterly projections while you handle a sick kid alone? That doesn't make sense. Clara glanced up at him. Unless you don't want me here. In which case, I'll go, but I'm leaving the soup. I want you here, Ethan admitted. I'm just not used to having backup. Get used to it. They spent the afternoon in comfortable domestic chaos, monitoring Mia's fever, administering medicine on schedule, heating soup, and convincing a reluctant patient to eat at least a few spoonfuls. Clara proved surprisingly competent at sick kid management, a skill set she confessed came from the years with Emma. She was constantly bringing home whatever virus was circulating through her preschool, Clara said, sitting beside Ethan on the kitchen floor while Mia napped on the couch. I became an expert in fever management, creative food bribery, and the art of the distraction. Do you miss it, the everyday stuff? Every single day, Clara said quietly. But it's getting easier to remember without feeling like I'm drowning. Being here, Helping with Mia, it doesn't replace what I lost, but it reminds me that I'm capable of caring about someone again. That grief doesn't have to be the only thing I carry. Ethan reached over, covering her hand with his. She didn't pull away, just turned her palm up so their fingers could intertwine, a small gesture that felt monumental. I don't know what we're doing, Ethan said. This thing between us. But I know I don't want it to stop. Clara was quiet for a long moment, staring at their joined hands. I'm terrified, she finally said, of carrying this much, of building something new and having it taken away again, of being happy and then losing it. I'm terrified too, of crossing lines with my boss, of screwing up my daughter's life if this doesn't work out, of wanting something I'm not sure I'm allowed to have. So we're both terrified. That's reassuring. But Clara was smiling, small and tentative. My therapist says fear is just evidence that something matters, that if we weren't scared, it would mean we didn't care enough for the stakes to feel real. Your therapist sounds wise. She is. She also thinks I should stop overthinking and just see where this goes. Clara turned to face him fully. So that's what I'm doing. Seeing where this goes. With you. With Mia. With this life you've somehow made space for me in. Ethan leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Their lips met soft and careful, a first kiss that tasted like possibility and fear, and the kind of hope that came from choosing vulnerability over safety. When they pulled apart, Mia's voice came from the couch, croaky but amused. Daddy's kissing Miss Clara. Does this mean she's going to move in? Ethan's face went hot. Clara laughed, genuine and startled, and something in that laugh sounded like joy. Not quite yet, sweetheart, Clara said, but maybe someday, if that's okay with you. It's okay with me, Mia said seriously. You make good soup and you read the best bedtime stories and you make Daddy smile the way he used to smile in old pictures before Mama left. The simplicity of it, the child's eye view that cut through all the complicated adult fears and landed on the essential truth, made Ethan's throat tight. Come here, he said to Clara, and she came, fitting herself against his side while they watched Mia doze on the couch, feverish but safe, surrounded by love in all its messy, imperfect forms. Mia's fever broke by morning, and life resumed its forward momentum. The board meeting on Tuesday went better than Clara had hoped. They approved the expanded creative autonomy and allocated budget for the kind of risk-taking campaigns that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Ethan officially stepped into the senior creative director role, bringing with him a philosophy of work-life balance and authentic storytelling that started shifting the agency culture in small but meaningful ways. More importantly, Clara started showing up, not just at work, but in the spaces between. School pickups when Ethan was stuck in late meetings, weekend trips to the farmer's market, the quiet Sunday mornings when Mia demanded pancakes and cartoons, and Clara proved surprisingly adept at both. She kept her own apartment but spent increasing amounts of time at Ethan's place, her toothbrush appearing in the bathroom, her work files spreading across his kitchen table, Winston taking up permanent residence next to Mr. Trunk on Mia's bed. It was gradual and undramatic, the way the best transformations were. No grand declarations, just a series of small choices to show up, to stay, to build something together. I have something to show you, Clara said one Saturday in early May. She'd arrived at Ethan's apartment that morning with an intensity that suggested this was important, though she wouldn't elaborate. Mia was at a birthday party, leaving them with rare, uninterrupted time. Ethan followed Clara to her car, where she pulled out a portfolio case he'd never seen before. I've been working with my therapist on processing Emma's death, Claire explained as they settled on Ethan's couch. Part of that has been going through her things, deciding what to keep and what to let go. And I found something I want to share with you. She opened the portfolio to reveal a children's book, hand-illustrated and carefully bound. The cover showed a girl with blonde hair standing beside an elephant, both of them looking up at stars. Emma wrote this, Clara said, her voice steady but soft. She was 9. It's about a girl who loses her mom and is adopted by an elephant who teaches her that family doesn't have to look the way you expect it to. That love can be found in unexpected places if you're brave enough to accept it. Ethan paged through the book, reading Emma's careful handwriting and admiring her surprisingly sophisticated illustrations. The story was touching and wise, the kind of narrative that came from a child who'd thought deeply about love and loss and belonging. "This is beautiful, Clara. I want to get it published," Clara said. "Properly published, as a real book. I've been talking with a children's book editor I know, and she thinks it has potential. The proceeds would go to a foundation I'm setting up in Emma's name, supporting kids with terminal illnesses and their families. That's an incredible way to honor her memory." Clara closed the portfolio, her hands resting on it like a blessing. "I couldn't have done this 6 months ago. I couldn't even look at her things without falling apart. But you and Mia taught me that remembering doesn't have to be about pain, that I can celebrate what Emma was without being destroyed by what I lost." Ethan pulled her close, and they sat in silence, holding the weight of grief and hope in equal measure. "There's something else," Clara said eventually. "The foundation needs a creative director, someone who understands storytelling and emotional connection and how to make people care about causes that matter." She looked at him meaningfully. "I was hoping you might be interested." "Clara, I already have a full-time job. This would be part-time, volunteer work, a few hours a week, helping develop the foundation's voice and message. You'd be perfect for it." She paused. "And it would mean a lot to me, to have you be part of this." How could he say no to that? Mia's 8th birthday arrived in June, and they threw a party in the small park near Ethan's apartment. Nothing extravagant, just a dozen kids, pizza, a homemade cake that Clara had insisted on baking despite her questionable culinary skills, and the science kit Ethan had been planning to buy for months. Clara showed up early to help set up, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that made her look younger, less corporate. She directed decorations with the same intensity she brought to campaign planning, arguing with Ethan about the optimal placement of streamers while Mia supervised from her position of birthday authority. "It needs to be more festive," Clara insisted, adding another balloon to an already balloon-heavy area. "It's plenty festive. We're approaching critical festivity levels." "There's no such thing. It's her birthday. More is always better." Ethan stepped back, watching Clara fuss over decorations for his daughter's party, and felt overwhelmed by the simple enormity of it. This woman who'd been a source of professional terror was now arguing about balloon placement because she wanted Mia's birthday to be perfect. "What?" Clara asked, catching his expression. "Nothing, just thank you for caring this much. She's important to me. You're both important to me." Clara said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And maybe it was. The party was chaotic and perfect. Kids ran and screamed and consumed alarming amounts of sugar. Mia opened presents with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been personally victimized by delayed gratification. When she got to Clara's gift, a beautifully illustrated copy of Emma's book, along with a letter explaining who Emma was and why this story mattered, she went very quiet. "This was your daughter's," Mia said, handling the book like it was made of glass. "It was, and now I'm sharing it with you because you remind me of her in the best ways." Clara knelt beside Mia. "She would have liked you very much." Mia threw her arms around Clara's neck, and Ethan watched his boss, his partner, his girlfriend, the woman who was slowly becoming the third point in their family triangle, hold his daughter and finally, fully, let herself be part of something new. Later, after the kids had been picked up and the park cleaned, the three of them walked home through streets painted gold with evening light. Mia was between them, holding both their hands, chattering about her favorite presents and whether 8 meant she was officially old enough for a later bedtime. "Absolutely not," Ethan said, "but I'm very mature for my age." "Still no." Mia looked up at Clara. "Miss Clara, will you tell him I'm mature?" "You are extremely mature," Clara agreed, "and your bedtime is still 8:30. "You're supposed to be on my side." "I'm on the side of adequate sleep for growing brains." They reached the apartment building, and Mia ran ahead to check the mailbox, her new favorite responsibility. Clara and Ethan stood in the fading light, watching her go. "I love you," Clara said quietly. "Both of you. I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again, and I'm terrified constantly that something will take it away, but I love you anyway." Ethan turned to face her fully, seeing the fear and courage warring in her expression. "I love you too. Have for weeks, maybe months. I just didn't know how to say it without making it weird. It's definitely weird. Your boss falling in love with you is objectively strange. Former boss. We're partners now. Partners who are in love and parenting a child together. That's even weirder. Good weird or bad weird? Clara kissed him, soft and certain. The best kind of weird. Mia returned with the mail and caught them kissing again. You guys do that a lot now. Is that a problem? Ethan asked. Mia considered this with the seriousness of a philosopher. No, it's nice. It means we're a real family now. And maybe that was the simplest truth of all. They were a family, not the one any of them had planned on, not the one that fit conventional definitions, but a family nonetheless. Built from crisis and courage, from midnight phone calls and bedtime stories, from the choice to show up and stay and risk caring even when caring meant risking loss. The months that followed were a masterclass in building a life together. Clara officially moved in that August, merging her pristine possessions with Ethan's comfortable chaos in ways that required negotiation and compromise and a surprising amount of debate about proper towel folding techniques. They need to be thirds, Clara insisted, refolding the towels Ethan had just finished folding. They're fine in halves. They still function as towels regardless of folding method. But thirds look neater and stack better. Clara, we're not reorganizing my towels. Our towels, and yes, we are. She won, because she usually did, but Ethan found he didn't mind. The apartment was fuller now, noisier, occasionally annoying in the way that came from three people learning to share space. It was also happier, warmer, more alive. Clara's promotion to executive VP came with increased responsibility and stress, but she handled it differently now. She delegated instead of micromanaging. She left at reasonable hours and didn't check email after 8 p.m. unless it was truly urgent. She took Sundays off entirely, dedicating them to family time, the farmer's market, Mia's soccer games, lazy afternoons reading or watching movies or doing absolutely nothing productive. Ethan thrived in his new role, building a creative department that valued innovation and authenticity over safe, forgettable work. The campaigns they produced started winning awards, but more importantly, they started mattering. Real people connected with the stories they told. Clients saw actual results beyond just metrics and data points. Emma's book was published in October, with an introduction written by Clara about loss and love and the unexpected ways families could form. The foundation launched alongside it, and Ethan threw himself into developing its creative voice, finding that using his skills for something beyond commercial purposes fed a part of his soul he hadn't known was hungry. Mia started third grade and told anyone who would listen that she had two parents now, which technically wasn't legal yet, but felt true in all the ways that mattered. Does this mean I should call Miss Clara Mom? Mia asked one evening over dinner. Clara froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. You can call me whatever feels comfortable, Clara said carefully. Clara is fine. Mom is fine if that's what you want. There's no wrong answer. Mia thought about this, her face scrunched in concentration. Can I try it out and see how it feels? Absolutely. Okay, Mom, can you pass the broccoli? Clara passed the broccoli with shaking hands, her eyes bright with tears she was clearly trying to control. Ethan reached over, squeezing her knee under the table. That felt good, Mia decided. I think I'll keep using it. That night, after Mia was asleep, Clara broke down crying in Ethan's arms. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being allowed to love again, to step into a role she'd thought she'd lost forever. I didn't think I'd ever get to be someone's mom again, she said between sobs. I thought that part of my life was over. It's not over. It's just different. And Emma would want you to be happy, to love and be loved. She'd want you to have this. How do you know? Because she wrote a book about finding family in unexpected places. She understood this already. Spring arrived again, marking a full year since that 2 a.m. phone call had set everything in motion. Clara suggested they go back to Voltage, the scene of her meltdown, as a way of acknowledging how far they'd come. That seems either therapeutic or masochistic, Ethan observed. Can it be both? They went on a Saturday night, leaving Mia with a trusted babysitter. The club was just as loud and overwhelming as Ethan remembered, But this time they were there together, standing at the bar drinking overpriced cocktails and watching the crowd with the bemused distance of people who'd moved beyond this scene. "This is where I hit rock bottom," Clara said, surveying the room. "Right there in that corner booth, drunk and alone and absolutely convinced my life was over. And now? Now I'm here with you, sober and loved, and building something I never thought I'd have again." She turned to face him. "Thank you for answering the phone that night. Thank you for calling." They stayed for one drink, then walked back to Clara's car through the same streets they'd navigated that terrible, transformative night. But everything looked different now. Brighter, full of possibility instead of despair. "I have something for you," Clara said when they got home, pulling a small box from her purse. Ethan opened it to find a key, not to her apartment, which he already had, but something else entirely. "It's to a storage unit," Clara explained. "I've been working on something, a project I want to show you." They drove to the facility, and Clara led him to a unit filled with Emma's artwork, photographs, personal items, all carefully organized and displayed like a private museum to a life well lived and deeply missed. "I couldn't look at this stuff for 3 years," Clara said, walking through the space. "But with your help, with Mia's love, I've been able to go through it, to remember without breaking, to celebrate Emma instead of just mourning her." She stopped in front of a photograph. Emma at 6 years old, grinning gap-toothed at the camera, an elephant clutch under one arm. "I want to give some of this to Mia. Not everything, but pieces that feel right. Emma's books, some of her art, maybe a few of her toys. I want Mia to know her sister." "Sister?" Ethan's voice caught on the word. "If that's okay with you. If we're building a family together, then Emma is part of that family, even if she's not physically here. And Mia should know about her, should understand that she's loved not just by us, but by the memory of someone who would have adored her." Ethan pulled Clara close, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was offering. "Of course it's okay. It's more than okay." They stood in that storage unit surrounded by memories of a child who'd been loved and lost, and Ethan understood that this was what healing looked like. Not forgetting or replacing, but expanding. Making room for the past and the present to coexist, honoring what was lost while embracing what was found. The proposal happened on an ordinary Tuesday in June, which was fitting because their entire relationship had been built on ordinary moments transformed by choice and courage. Ethan had planned something elaborate, but in the end, he just asked while they were making dinner, Mia working on homework at the table, music playing from the old speakers, everything domestic and chaotic and perfect. "Marry me," he said, and Clara turned from the stove, wooden spoon in hand, looking completely shocked. "What?" "Marry me. Make this official. Be my wife and Mia's mom and Winston's co-parent." "You're proposing while I'm stirring pasta sauce?" "I'm proposing while we're living our life. This ordinary, beautiful life we've built together. So yes, marry me." Mia looked up from her homework. "Are you asking Mom to marry you?" "I am." "Good. I was wondering when you'd get around to it." Clara laughed, tears streaming down her face, the wooden spoon still in her hand like the world's most absurd engagement prop. "Yes. Of course, yes." They got married 3 months later in the same small park where they'd celebrated Mia's 8th birthday, surrounded by friends and family and the creative team that had witnessed their transformation from boss and employee to partners, to something infinitely more precious. Mia was the flower girl, Winston and Mr. Trunk served as ring bearers, and Clara wore a simple dress that made her look radiant and real and happier than Ethan had ever seen her. During the vows, Clara spoke about second chances and unexpected grace, about learning that love didn't replace what was lost, but created new space for joy. She talked about Emma, honoring her memory while embracing this new chapter, and there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Ethan spoke about midnight phone calls and the choice to show up when it would have been easier to turn away, about his daughter's wisdom in a stuffed elephant and the woman who'd been brave enough to tear down her armor and risk being human again. "I love you," he said simply, "for who you were, who you are, and who we're becoming together." They kissed while their guests cheered, and Mia shouted, "Finally!" loud enough to make everyone laugh. The reception was held in Ethan's apartment, Their apartment now, officially, and it was crowded and loud and full of the kind of joy that came from people who'd watched something broken become whole. Marcus gave a toast about creative partnerships that became love stories. Jessica presented them with a framed print from the Kellerman campaign, the one that had started everything. Rebecca read a poem she'd written about courage and second chances that made Clara cry all over again. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had left and Mia was asleep on the couch still wearing her flower girl dress, Ethan and Clara stood in their kitchen surrounded by the debris of celebration, empty glasses and half-eaten cake, and the beautiful mess of a life being lived. "We did it," Clara said, leaning against him. "We actually did it." "Built a family from a drunk dial and a risky campaign pitch? Yeah, we did." "When you put it that way, it sounds completely insane." "It is completely insane, but it's ours." Clara turned in his arms, and in her eyes, Ethan saw everything they'd survived and everything they were building, the past and the present, grief and joy, loss and love, all woven together into something strong and real and worth every risk they'd taken. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not hanging up. Thank you for calling." They kissed while their daughter slept nearby, while Winston and Mr. Trunk kept watch from the couch, while the city hummed outside with all its chaos and possibility. And in that moment, Ethan understood that this was what grace looked like. Not a dramatic intervention, but a series of small, brave choices to answer the phone, to show up, to risk caring when caring meant risking everything. It wasn't the fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real. Messy and complicated and built from the pieces of broken things transformed into something new. It was a family forged from crisis and kindness, from midnight calls and bedtime stories, from the decision that sometimes the right choice was the hard choice, and the hard choice was always, always worth making. And as they stood in their kitchen with cake on the counter and love in their hearts, Ethan thought about that phone call 1 year ago, about the moment when everything could have gone differently. He thought about the choice he'd made to be decent instead of resentful, to show kindness when it was inconvenient, to risk everything for someone who'd never shown him mercy. It had seemed like such a small decision at the time. It had changed absolutely everything.